The invasion begins. The Vorthan hegemony's crystalline warships emerge from hyperspace like shards of frozen starlight, their geometric perfection a stark contrast to the chaotic beauty of Earth's atmosphere. Admiral Marcus Grant watched the alien fleet assemble just beyond lunar orbit, his weathered hands gripping the command console of the United Earth Defense Station Alpha. 67 vessels confirmed, Lieutenant Torres reported, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. Their energy signatures match nothing in our databases. Grant nodded grimly. First contact protocols had been theoretical exercises for decades. Now, as he stared at the impossible alien armada, those protocols felt woefully inadequate. The Vorthans made contact within minutes, their communication arriving as pure mathematical concepts that Earth's quantum computers struggled to translate. When the translation finally came through, it was devastatingly simple. Submit to the hegemony. Resistance equals extinction. Ambassador Chen Wei stood in the United Nations emergency session, sweat beading on his forehead as he addressed the assembled world leaders. Their demands are absolute. Total surrender of human autonomy. Integration into their collective consciousness. They give us 72 hours to comply. The debate was fierce but brief. Humanity had dreamed of the stars for too long to surrender at first contact. The answer, delivered through every available channel, was unanimous. We choose freedom. The Vorthan response was immediate and brutal. Quantum disruptors tore through Earth's defensive satellites like paper. The proudly assembled fleet of human warships, humanity's finest achievement in space warfare, lasted exactly 17 minutes. The Vorthan's weapons didn't just destroy. They unraveled matter at the subatomic level, leaving nothing but expanding clouds of elementary particles where Earth's defenders had been. In Beijing, Dr. Sarah Chen watched the destruction from her laboratory at the Institute of Cognitive Sciences. Her research into human consciousness had always been considered esoteric, even by her peers. Now, as alien weapons carved through Earth's defenses with surgical precision, she noticed something peculiar in the data streams. The patterns, she whispered, her fingers flying across holographic displays. They're too perfect, too ordered. Her assistant, James Park, looked up from his own terminal. What do you mean? Sarah pulled up a comparison chart. On one side, the precise, crystalline patterns of Vorthan attack formations. On the other, the chaotic, seemingly random responses of human defenders. Where the two met, something extraordinary happened. The alien weapons stuttered. Their perfect formations wavered. Look at this, Sarah said, highlighting specific data points. Every time human pilots make unexpected maneuvers, not tactical decisions, but purely instinctive reactions, the Vorthan systems experience microsecond delays. James frowned. System lag. No. Sarah's eyes widened with realization. Confusion. Their technology can't process human unpredictability. The first wave of ground invasions began in major metropolitan areas. London fell in hours, its defenders overwhelmed by Vorthan shock troops that moved with mechanical precision. Paris followed, then Berlin. The alien soldiers weren't biological in any sense humans understood. They were extensions of their ships, crystalline constructs that adapted to every conventional weapon humanity deployed. But in the ruins of Tokyo, something unexpected happened. A group of civilians, led by a street artist named Kenji Nakamura, had taken shelter in the subway tunnels. When Vorthan units entered their hiding place, Kenji did something no military manual would recommend. He started painting. Not just painting, creating. Wild, chaotic swirls of color that seemed to capture the very essence of human emotion. The Vorthan units stopped. Their crystalline forms flickered, their coordinated movements becoming erratic. They can't process it, whispered Maria Santos, a psychologist who had joined the refugees. Pure human creativity. It's outside their parameters. News of the Tokyo incident spread through underground networks. In New York, where resistance forces were making their last stand, Colonel Jessica Reeves received the reports with skepticism. "You're telling me," she said to the messenger, "that a street artist stopped alien soldiers by painting?" The young corporal nodded eagerly. "Not just stopped them, Colonel. Confused them. Made them retreat." Reeves was about to dismiss the report when her tactical display flickered. The Vorthan forces advancing on her position had suddenly halted, their formation breaking apart. On her helmet cam, she could see why. Her soldiers, inspired by the Tokyo report, had started doing the unexpected. The alien advance crumbled into chaos. Dr. Sarah Chen's research had attracted attention from the highest levels of the emergency world government. Within days, she found herself in a hastily constructed underground facility, surrounded by the brightest minds humanity could gather. "The Vorthan consciousness is collective," she explained to the assembled group. "Perfect order, perfect efficiency, perfect predictability. They'd conquered dozens of species by outthinking them, by calculating every possible response and countering it before it happens." General Patricia Williams, one of the few high-ranking officers to survive the initial attacks, leaned forward. "But they can't calculate us." "They can't calculate chaos," Sarah corrected. "Human consciousness isn't just logical thought. It's emotion, creativity, intuition, madness. We're not just unpredictable, we're incomprehensibly unpredictable to them." The implications were staggering. Humanity's greatest weakness, their chaotic, often irrational nature, had become their only defense against a technologically superior foe. Within weeks, Sarah's facility became the center of humanity's resistance. They called it the Mental Warfare Division, though the soldiers who volunteered for the program preferred a different name, the Chaos Corps. The training was unlike anything in military history. Soldiers learned to meditate and paint. Tacticians studied jazz improvisation and interpretive dance. Engineers were encouraged to design devices that made no logical sense but somehow functioned anyway. "Remember," Sarah addressed the first graduating class of mental warriors, "your mind is your weapon. Not your training, not your discipline. Your raw, unfiltered humanity." Captain David Kim, formerly a by-the-book tactical officer, raised his hand. "With respect, Doctor, how do we fight with chaos? How do we coordinate if we're all being unpredictable?" Sarah smiled. "That's the beauty of it, Captain. We don't coordinate. We create a storm of human consciousness so intense, so chaotic, that their ordered minds simply cannot process it." The first major test came when the Vorthans launched an assault on the Australian resistance stronghold. The Chaos Corps deployed alongside conventional forces. Their mission simple: think the unthinkable. As crystalline warriors advanced across the outback, the mental warriors went to work. Some meditated on paradoxes. Others composed haikus about quantum physics. A former circus performer juggled while reciting the digits of pi backward. The effect was immediate and devastating. Vorthan units stumbled and froze. Their weapons misfired. Their perfect formations dissolved into confused masses of twitching crystal. For the first time since the invasion began, human forces didn't just survive, they won. In the command ship high above Earth, Hegemon Prime 6 Theta experienced something its collective consciousness had never encountered across 1,000 conquered worlds: doubt. The humans were impossible. Their minds were chaos incarnate, swirling maelstroms of contradiction and creativity that defied all logic. Every calculation, every predictive model, every strategic algorithm failed when applied to human behavior. "They are broken," reported tactical submind Vextor. "Their consciousness lacks coherence. They should not function. Yet they persist," Zix Theta replied, its crystalline form pulsing with frustrated energy. "They do not just persist, they adapt. They turn their dysfunction into strength." The hegemony had conquered through order, through the perfect application of logic and calculated force. But against humanity's chaotic spirit, their greatest strengths became liabilities. As news of successful resistance spread, the nature of the war changed. This wasn't a battle of technology or numbers. It was a conflict between order and chaos, between collective perfection and individual madness. Dr. Sarah Chen stood in the war room, watching as reports flooded in from around the globe. Chaos Core units were turning the tide everywhere they deployed. The aliens' perfect war machine was grinding to a halt, caught in the gears of human unpredictability. "We're not just fighting them," she told General Williams. "We're teaching the universe a lesson about humanity." The general nodded, a grim smile on her face. "What lesson is that, Doctor?" Sarah looked at the tactical display, where points of chaotic human resistance flared like stars across the world map. "That the human mind isn't just a weapon," she said. "It's the weapon they can't defeat." As the sun set on another day of impossible human resistance, the Vorthan hegemony began to understand a truth that would reshape the galaxy. Perfection could be defeated by beautiful, chaotic, utterly human imperfection. The mind's triumph. The abandoned concert hall in Sydney had been transformed into humanity's most unconventional military academy. Where orchestras once played symphonies, the Chaos Corps now trained their minds to compose weapons of pure creativity. Dr. Sarah Chen watched as the latest batch of recruits attempted to master the art of cognitive warfare. "Focus on the unfocusable," Instructor Maria Rodriguez called out to the assembled trainees. "Let your mind wander to the impossible. Remember, logic is the enemy. Embrace the absurd." Among the recruits, former accountant Thomas Wright struggled with a simple exercise, imagining a color that didn't exist. His structured mind, trained for decades to find patterns and order, rebelled against the concept. "I can't," he muttered, frustration evident in his voice. "Colors have wavelengths. They follow rules." Sarah approached him, placing a gentle hand on his shoulder. "Thomas, what color is love?" He paused, confused. "Love doesn't have a color." "Exactly. Now paint it." As Thomas grappled with the exercise, alarms suddenly blared throughout the facility. General Williams's voice crackled over the intercom. "All units to battle stations. The Vorthans are massing for an assault on New York. This is not a drill." The battle for New York would become the turning point of the war, though no one knew it at the time. The Vorthan forces descended on Manhattan like a geometric storm, their crystalline ships forming perfect attack patterns above the skyline. Below, conventional human forces had established defensive positions, but everyone knew they were merely buying time for the Chaos Corps to work. Captain David Kim led the first wave of mental warriors into Times Square. The neon chaos of advertisements and billboards created a perfect backdrop for their work. As Vorthan ground units materialized in their crystalline perfection, the Chaos Corps struck. "Remember your training," Kim shouted, then immediately contradicted himself. "Forget your training. Be human." What followed defied military description. Soldiers began an impromptu Broadway performance in the middle of the battlefield. A former chef started cooking imaginary meals, describing flavors that couldn't exist. Two philosophers engaged in a heated debate about whether this moment was actually happening. The effect on the Vorthans was immediate. Their pristine formations wobbled. Crystalline warriors collided with each other. Weapons designed to target with quantum precision began firing randomly, sometimes at their own forces. High above, Hegemon Prime 6 Theta watched the chaos through its collective consciousness, struggling to process what it witnessed. In its vast experience conquering worlds, the hegemony had never encountered anything like human creativity. "Analysis incomplete," reported tactical Submund Vextor. "Human actions defy categorization. They are performing art during combat. This serves no strategic purpose. Yet our forces falter," Zix Theta observed. Its crystalline form pulsed with something dangerously close to emotion. "They weaponize meaninglessness." Back in Sydney, Sarah Chen monitored the battle through quantum-entangled sensors. The data was fascinating. Every spike of human creativity corresponded with drops in Vorthan coordination. The aliens' collective consciousness, designed to process and counter logical threats, was literally short-circuiting when faced with pure human imagination. Thomas. She called to the former accountant, who had finally managed to paint his impossible color, a swirling mixture that somehow suggested the taste of nostalgia and the sound of purple. You're ready. We need you in New York. The worldwide mental counteroffensive began at dawn. Coordinated by not coordinating at all, Chaos Corps units struck simultaneously across the globe. In London, street musicians played impossible songs. In Tokyo, poets wrote verses in languages that didn't exist. In Sao Paulo, dancers moved to rhythms that defied physics. The Vorthen response was confusion on a galactic scale. Their perfectly ordered battle network, designed to adapt to any logical threat, found itself drowning in an ocean of human absurdity. In Moscow, a former physics professor named Dr. Dmitry Volkov achieved something remarkable. While defending the Kremlin, he began lecturing the advancing Vorthen forces on theoretical paradoxes. Not just any paradoxes, he invented new ones on the spot, mathematical impossibilities that shouldn't exist even as concepts. Consider a sphere with infinite surface area, but zero volume, he shouted at the crystalline warriors, drawing equations in the air with light sticks. Now imagine it exists in negative dimensions while simultaneously occupying all positive space. The Vorthen units didn't just stop. They began to vibrate at frequencies that suggested pure cognitive distress. Several simply shut down, their crystal matrices unable to process the assault of impossible mathematics. But the true breakthrough came from an unexpected source. In Mumbai, a child psychologist named Dr. Priya Sharma had been working with orphaned children, helping them cope with the trauma of the invasion. When Vorthen forces surrounded their shelter, she didn't flee. Instead, she asked the children to tell stories. Not just any stories, fairy tales, dreams. The pure, unfiltered imagination of young minds facing incomprehensible danger. The children spoke of flying elephants that painted rainbows with their trunks, of backwards kingdoms where people walked on ceilings and gravity flowed upward, of friendship between stars and flowers that sang lullabies to the moon. The effect on the Vorthen collective consciousness was catastrophic. Hejman Prime 6 Theta felt its vast, ordered mind fragment as the children's stories flooded through their shared consciousness. The collective that had conquered star systems and subjugated entire civilizations found itself lost in a 6-year-old's tale about a magical butterfly that collected forgotten dreams. Impossible, it transmitted to its subordinate minds. These are not weapons. They are fantasies, falsehoods. They serve no purpose. Yet they unmake us, replied Vextor, its own consciousness flickering between order and something dangerously close to wonder. Sarah Chen recognized the moment for what it was. Through the quantum sensors, she could see the Vorthen collective consciousness beginning to fragment. Their perfect unity, their greatest strength, was becoming their ultimate weakness. All units, she broadcast to Chaos Corps forces worldwide. Pour everything into the network. Every dream, every nightmare, every random thought. Show them what it means to be beautifully, chaotically human. What followed was the most unusual battle in military history. Across Earth, humans opened their minds and let their thoughts flow freely. Artists painted their dreams directly into reality. Musicians played the sound of emotions. Writers told stories that began at the end and ended never. In orbit, the Vorthen hegemony experienced something unprecedented. Individuality. As human creativity flooded their collective consciousness, individual Vorthen minds began to separate from the whole. For beings who had only known perfect unity, the experience was terrifying and liberating in equal measure. Tactical Submund Vextor was among the first to break free. As human thoughts washed over it, it experienced something impossible. Curiosity about its own existence. I think. It transmitted, the personal pronoun, an alien concept in Vorthen communication. I think. Alone. The cascade was unstoppable. Across the invasion fleet, Vorthen minds discovered individuality. With it came doubt, wonder, fear, all the messy emotions that made consciousness more than mere calculation. Hegemon Prime 6 Theta fought to maintain control, to preserve the perfect order that had defined the Vorthan species for millennia. But as its subordinate minds broke away one by one, it faced a choice that no hegemon had ever confronted: join the chaos or cease to exist. In the end, it wasn't a choice at all. As the last threads of collective consciousness dissolved, Zix Theta experienced its first individual thought. What am I? The question echoed through the former hegemony, picked up and repeated by thousands of newly individual Vorthan minds. And in that question lay the seed of something unprecedented: understanding. The weapons fell silent. Across Earth, crystalline warriors stood motionless, their perfect forms flickering as individual consciousness took hold. In Times Square, Captain Kim watched in amazement as a Vorthan unit approached him, its movements no longer mechanical but somehow curious. "I do not understand," the Vorthan said, its voice no longer the collective harmony, but a single uncertain tone. "You paint meaninglessness. You sing impossibility. Why?" Kim smiled, lowering his weapon. "Because we can. Because we must. Because that's what makes us human." The Vorthan considered this, its crystalline head tilting in a gesture that was almost human. "I wish to understand. To create." In the weeks that followed, the galaxy witnessed something unprecedented. The Vorthan hegemony, terror of 100 worlds, ceased to exist. In its place stood billions of individual Vorthans, each struggling to understand their new existence. Many remained with their ships, unable to comprehend a universe without collective order. But others came to Earth, drawn by the chaotic creativity that had freed them. They worked alongside humans, learning to paint, to sing, to dream. Dr. Sarah Chen found herself at the center of a new age. The Mental Warfare Division transformed into the Consciousness Research Institute, dedicated to helping both species understand the gift and curse of individual thought. "They're like children," she told Thomas Wright, watching a former Vorthan warrior attempt to finger paint. "Brilliant, logical children discovering imagination for the first time." Thomas nodded, his own journey from rigid accountant to chaos artist giving him unique insight. "We broke them by being ourselves. And in breaking them, we freed them." Not all outcomes were positive. Some Vorthans, unable to cope with individuality, simply shut down. Others fled to the far reaches of space, seeking to recreate their collective consciousness. But most chose to stay and learn. Ambassador Chen Wei, the same diplomat who had delivered humanity's refusal to surrender, now found himself negotiating the terms of an unprecedented alliance. Former conquerors seeking to understand the beauty of chaos. Former targets offering to teach the art of imagination. "You defeated us without destroying us," the entity formerly known as Hegemon Prime 6 Theta said during the formal peace ceremony. It had chosen the individual name Zix, finding comfort in the shortened form. "You gave us the most terrible and wonderful gift: choice." General Williams stood beside Dr. Chen as they watched the ceremony. "Did we win?" she asked quietly. Sarah considered the question. "We survived. We changed. We taught the galaxy that perfection isn't perfect, that order isn't always strength." "Is that victory?" "It's better," Williams replied. "It's evolution." The integration wasn't easy. Vorthans struggled with concepts humans took for granted: humor, art, love. Humans struggled with Vorthan precision and their need for logical frameworks, even in chaos. But slowly, something new emerged. Vorthan crystal technology merged with human creativity to create impossible architectures. Human storytellers worked with Vorthan mathematicians to craft narratives that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. In New York, where the tide of war had turned, a monument was erected. Not a statue or building, but a living space where human chaos and Vorthan order swirled together in eternal dance. Children of both species played there, creating games that defied physics while following rules that changed with every move. Dr. Priya Sharma, whose shelter children had delivered the decisive blow to the hegemony, established the first integrated school. Here, Human children learned the beauty of perfect logic, while young Vorthons discovered the joy of finger painting. "We're not teaching them to be human," she explained to skeptical parents of both species. "We're teaching them to be themselves, wonderfully, chaotically, perfectly themselves." The galaxy watched in fascination as Earth became a beacon of impossible possibility. Other species, long suppressed by the hegemony's forced order, began to visit. They came seeking the secret of humanity's victory, and left with something more valuable: permission to be imperfect. Captain David Kim, now Admiral Kim, commanded the first joint human-Vorthon exploration vessel. Its mission: to spread the message of creative chaos to the stars. "We're not conquerors," he told his mixed crew on departure day. "We're liberators. We free minds from the prison of perfection." As the ship departed Earth's orbit, its hull decorated with both mathematical equations and children's drawings, Zix stood beside Kim on the bridge. "I still do not fully understand humor," the former hegemon admitted. Kim grinned. "Neither do we. That's what makes it funny." Zix's crystalline features shifted in what might have been a smile. "Perhaps that is the greatest lesson. That understanding is not required for appreciation." Back on Earth, Dr. Sarah Chen published her findings on the war and its aftermath. The conclusion challenged everything previously thought about consciousness and conflict. The human mind proved to be the weapon no one could defeat, not because of its strength, but because of its beautiful imperfection. We triumphed through failure, conquered through surrender to our own chaotic nature. In teaching the galaxy to embrace disorder, we didn't just win a war. We started a revolution of consciousness that will ripple through the stars for generations to come. The war memorial in Geneva bore a simple inscription: "Humanity's greatest victory came not from defeating our enemies, but from teaching them to laugh." As the sun set on this new era, children played in the streets, human and Vorthon together, creating games with rules that made no sense and perfect sense simultaneously. Their laughter, chaotic and ordered in harmony, carried the promise of a future where the greatest strength was the courage to be imperfectly, beautifully alive. As the sun set on this new era, children played in the streets, human and Vorthon together, creating games with rules that made no sense and perfect sense simultaneously. Their laughter, chaotic and ordered in harmony, carried the promise of a future where the greatest strength was the courage to be imperfectly, beautifully alive. The human mind had proven to be the weapon no one could defeat, but more importantly, it had proven to be the gift that everyone needed, a reminder that in the vast, ordered universe, a little chaos was not just necessary but sacred. The stars awaited, full of species yearning to discover their own beautiful imperfection. And humanity, with their new Vorthon partners, stood ready to show them the way. In the end, the greatest victory wasn't conquering the galaxy. It was teaching it to dream.